Welcome to the Tuscarawas County Anti-Drug Coalition podcast, bringing you open and honest conversations about resources in Tuscarawas County. Now here's your host, Jodi Salvo.
Hi, this is Jodi Salvo. Welcome to another Tuscarawas County Anti-Drug Coalition podcast. Today, I'm joined with two special friends, and we're going to be talking about a subject that we've spoke about in the past. However, we speak about this fairly frequently because it's just really important. This is around prescription drug medication safety, safe use, safe storage, safe disposal. And it's one of those areas that we just need to be cognizant of because I think there's so many prescription medications in our community. And this is probably one of the easiest things we can ever do to protect our young people. So with that being said, I'm going to let our guests introduce themselves. Rachel?
I'm Rachel Rothacher, the Administrative Director at the Stark Tusc Wayne Recycling District.
Mary Newman, school nurse at New Philadelphia City Schools.
Nice. Now, I know recycling district, you're like, why the recycling district? Rachel, why are you involved or how are you involved in this?
We get that question a lot with this, but not only do we handle the recycling, but we also handle the safe disposal of other municipal solid waste. So the prescription drugs are one of those many waste streams, as well as hazardous waste like household chemicals and things like that, yard waste, tires. We kind of cover everything.
Nice. And I'm just going to say, Rachel is a member of the Tuscarawas County Anti-Drug Coalition. She's on the prescription drug committee. And she's just a very valuable person of our team.
Well, thank you.
Just a lot of ideas. And your organization is just super helpful. They do a lot of funding and support. Tell us about some of the work you guys do around prescription drugs.
Yes, we're very lucky because we have enough funding to be able to fund what we call a litter deputy from the sheriff's office. So that person, we can pretty much tell them, hey, here's the areas of focus we want to focus on. One of those primary areas is the prescription drug disposal. So that's how we fund the medication drop boxes that are at the local police stations and the sheriff's office. They empty them and they transport them up to a hazardous waste incinerator up near Cleveland, which is actually how the DEA and the EPA suggest you dispose of any of the at least riskier drugs. I'll make a differentiation in that later on in this interview, but we don't really want vitamins or things like that in there. We really want the prescription, the controlled substances, things like that in Perfect. Those drop boxes. And then we also do have funding for awareness about the DEA drug take-back days, as well as some other initiatives, mini grant funding for funding some of the promotional materials so that we can really help educate and bring awareness to what the options are for getting rid of these drugs, either for yourself or for family members, or if you have someone pass away and you're stuck with all these drugs, What am I supposed to do with this?
Awesome. Thank you for giving us that kind of understanding of where this happens. One of the reasons we're having this conversation today is we have an upcoming DEA drug take-back day, and it's April 24th.
Yep, they're Saturdays for everyone's convenience, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And this year we have the same locations that we've had in years past, where we have the Cleveland Clinic Union Hospital at I think their south entrance is where they collect them, but there's signage to direct you there. And then at Trinity Hospital, Twin City, as well as the Mercy Medical Center of Tuscarawas County. Yep. I forget, they may have adjusted their name, but it's the same location.
I know.
But yeah, we have deputies stationed outside, so you can drive in, drop off medications. It's anonymous. They'll take them, they put them in a box, and then the DEA comes and collects them later. And the reason we host the events, even though we have the year-round drop-offs, is because something about an event, people like to come out. It does. And also, some people are leery about going to police stations. Even though they're anonymous drop boxes there, you're still in the police station. That's one of the requirements for the boxes, is that they are in view of someone or under video surveillance. That can make people uneasy. So we like to host the drop-offs. The DEA does fund the disposal during the drop-off days, so it actually makes it a little easier on us we can dispose of them the rest of the year. So, yeah, we always like to partner with the Sheriff's Office and the Anti-Drug Coalition and all the partnering hospitals to make this happen.
I appreciate that you said that whole process of it's incinerated and the litter control takes it up there, because I know sometimes people are leery about even going to the permanent drop-off boxes, or even when they come through the National DEA Take-Back Day. You know, do I need to take my name off the pill bottles. What would you say on some of that?
Yeah, we usually would recommend that people either black out the name or take the label off if they can. We're trying to move toward not collecting the containers because that's a lot of the volume and we don't really want to pay to burn a bunch of cardboard and plastic packaging. So we're kind of working toward that. But for right now, I think you can even bring them in a baggie if you want, or if you want to leave them in the container so they don't spill, you're welcome to. The one thing that we do ask, this is for pills. This is not for creams or liquid medications, things like that we steer away from because the place that incinerates them doesn't really want those items. And really we want the riskiest kind of controlled substances.
So Rachel, what would you suggest if someone has liquids?
Right now, I think the best method, usually they'll tell you right on the container with the pamphlet what to do, but what we recommend for the liquids is actually mixing them in with like kitty litter or coffee grounds or something like that and putting them with your normal trash. The reason the pills we kind of handle differently is because, at least, again, with the risky ones, we want to make sure that they are non-retrievable.
Okay.
And there's a worry about putting whole pills in your trash. Oh, maybe someone will see that. And the other component of it is our wastewater treatment plants aren't really adept at filtering out anything you might flush. So that they used to tell you to flush them, and they're trying to get away from that. The EPA is really trying to get at least that class of drugs incinerated.
Sure. Okay. There's just a ton of helpful information you just threw out. So, and Mary, you're not off the hook because we're going to get into the why we're disposing in just a moment. But I always just want to make people really comfortable with drug take back opportunities. And one of the things I personally love to be at the take back days. It's actually quite enjoyable. We have law enforcement, we have volunteers from the hospitals and from the coalition. And it's really kind of wonderful just seeing people come, and we always just have a fun time on those days. However, people always come with needles, and that's a complicated one because no one really disposes of needles.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah. There's like one needle exchange program, but it's up in the city of Canton, up in Stark County. So most of our residents probably wouldn't want to drive that. So what we typically will tell people, because we've had trouble getting a needle program off the ground here in the county for various reasons, but what we typically would tell people is either you can get an approved sharps container, but there's a cost to that. So typically people don't want to pay. We will tell them save like a laundry detergent bottle or another kind of rigid plastic, put the sharps in there and write on the container that's sharp so that the waste handlers, because that's the biggest reason those are hazardous. They might stick somebody, they might give someone, I mean, if you had an illness or if you have, there's blood on the needle, you don't want to, don't want to pass around diseases and things like that.
So if you do have needles, Rachel just said, make sure get like a Tide container or something, put the needles right in there. We also have flyers that, if you're driving through that day that will pass out. I want people to know that it's not that we're not hearing you. It's just a barrier we have. And this is a safe option to put it in a container, mark it, and then you can put it in your household trash. So that was one. And the other thing you had mentioned is sometimes people just have barriers, whether it's a barrier to go to our permanent drop-off box, which we have locations throughout Tuscarawas County, or if someone has a barrier to get to that take-back days, which are in April and October. We also do have drug deactivation bags that are available here in the county. Couple ways you can secure these. We disseminate these through libraries, through organizations, agencies throughout the county. You can also go on the Tusc ADC website, and you can order one right there and we'll mail them out to your home. These bags are used if you have unwanted, unused medications. You open it, you put your medications in here, fill it halfway with water, you let it sit open for 30 seconds, you seal it, you shake it up, and it deactivates the medications as well. And then you can put it in your home trash. One of the things Rachel said is we just want to deactivate drugs with the potential for abuse. So there's a whole bunch of different ways. Our law enforcement has the drop-offs. We have the take-back days, which will be April 24th. We could mail you a drug deactivation bag. Is there anything else we'd want to mention on the take-back days?
I'm trying to think. It's funny because you don't think maybe someone who's young that doesn't have a recurrent medicine, that's one that could be abused. Like, what could I bring? What will I have? We like to tell people that Maybe it's medicine that's expired. I brought an example on to show if we wanted to. I have one, a painkiller, a really strong controlled painkiller that was from after I gave birth.
Okay.
So that's been sitting in my cabinet. Why do I still have it? I've actually been hanging on to it for this reason, to be able to demonstrate if I needed to how these things worked. But yeah, it's one of those things where you don't really want to leave them in your cabinet, especially if you have young kids walking around. Now, they can't get into the cabinet now, but as they get older, they might reach it. Sure. Some of the pills are colorful. They don't know what they are. So it's nice to have somewhere to put them where they're out of reach of children, or as the kids get older, again, maybe they're teenage friends. You don't know who's coming in and out of the house. It's a worry, especially if you have a pill that you have to take regularly and not just maybe have some leftover painkillers.
Absolutely.
But we're here to serve either kind of person. If you have expired ones, or if you have ones you got from another person, again, someone passed away and now you're stuck with them, we're here to help.
Absolutely. So I'll tell you what, Rachel just brought up the safety box, and we'll talk about that in a second. I am going to steer now from the Take Back Day to Mary. Mary's a school nurse at New Philadelphia, and Rachel was here about how do we dispose and some of the importance, but Mary's going to kind of take this to young people. You're in the schools. What's your perspective on prescription medications?
I like to see them stored safely. That's why the box is an excellent idea. Typically, medications, in the past at least, people have kept them in their medicine cabinet in the bathroom. And when you have people over, what is the room that they use most? The bathroom. Sure. And people do go through things like that. They are drug seeking sometime, or just curious. Again, an easy reach of children. So we want to make sure they're secure to avoid all those possibilities.
Yeah. And I think that's so important. Clearly, our society has a problem with substance abuse and addiction. And we know a lot of addiction really comes out of a home medicine cabinet. Mm-hmm. Sometimes intentionally, sometimes not intentionally. So it could be someone has a prescribed medication and maybe does not take them as indicated. Instead of one pill every 4 hours, it could be 2 pills every 4 hours or 1 pill every 3 hours. And that can quickly progress to an addiction.
Absolutely. More is not better.
Yeah.
There is a reason there is a prescription label on that bottle to tell you how many to take, how often to take, and the duration to take it. I can't emphasize that enough. Even with things that are not necessarily narcotic in nature, just for example, antibiotics. The doctor tells you to take 1 pill a day for 7 days. Mm-hmm. That's not a suggestion. That's the way you're supposed to take it. And that's why, again, with the storage and the disposal, you should not have extra medicine on hand. The exception being eye drops, ear drops, or something that you may take as needed. So there's people that have anti-anxiety medication, for instance. Sure. So they're not going to necessarily take that all the time. But for the general rule, you shouldn't have extra.
Yeah.
If you take it as prescribed, which is the way that it's going to help you. So take it as prescribed, and if you do have leftover, then you want to dispose of that properly.
And I would say that there's a couple caveats on that. I used to be a geriatric social worker, and I know often an older person might be prescribed a medication and they were resistant or intolerant to it. And, I think part of our different resources to help people get them out of the home, because what would happen, it didn't work, and you weren't always thinking, where do you take that medication that was not used? So part of our tools are to help people just like you would do anything else. The medication's here, I'm not using it, get it out of my home.
Absolutely.
Especially our older population, because we do have quite a few people that struggle with addiction, and they're looking for medications. And I always say to older people, if you have a hip surgery, that's not something you probably want to tell the whole world. Right. Because there's going to be people that know, well, you're coming home from the hospital, and there's a good chance you're going to be prescribed a prescription pain medication, which puts you at risk for someone wanting to access that medication in your home.
Right. And addiction is a disease, and it's not necessarily that your grandson wants to take your oxycodone that you have there from your surgery, but they may just not be able to help themselves.
Yeah.
So not keeping it on hand if it's no longer in use, or if it is in use, then getting the lockbox so that it can be stored safely and not easily accessible.
Yeah. So which one of you two want to describe the lockbox? Because that's a new initiative of the coalition.
Yeah, I could describe. You can fill in the blanks if I miss anything. But my organization, we did give some mini grant funding to get these lock boxes. Now, we like to be sure people know they are not safes. If someone was desperate and hitting with a sledgehammer or something, they're going to get in here. But it is a deterrent, and it is a good place to kind of store everything. So we had these designed where they kind of tell you what the purpose is, who's funded it, whatever. And then there's a little key code on top. I already set mine up, so hopefully my children aren't watching to know what it is. And then on the inside, you have these clasps that you open it up. And when you first get the box, we actually have some materials in there again. We have some materials in here, a magnet that has the safe disposal information, things like that. We have a doTERRA bag just in case you do need one. You can. There's a card on it so that if you use it, you can give us some feedback. That way we know who is using these things. We want to make sure we get these materials in the hands of the people who need them and in the hands of people who are at the highest risk of having abuse take place in the household or having prescriptions that are the unsafest. So now I put a couple of pills in here as examples, so you'll all get to know a little more about me today, and that's okay. I did have hydrocodone, a couple left from a pregnancy. Again, I was hanging on to them just so I could demonstrate things like this. That would be one I would probably take to the DEA take-back day or to a drop box or something like that, though if I were in a pinch, I could use a doTERRA bag if I was worried. Another one I had was exactly what you were describing. It was an anti-anxiety medicine for panic attacks, which thankfully I haven't had that problem as much lately, so now these are expired.
Okay.
So they're not going to work. They're bright green. Again, maybe a kid would mistake them for candy, so that's why I keep things like that in this drop box. It is nice because, again, you can centralize everything, put anything that is outside of the vitamins, eye drops, that kind of stuff doesn't need to go in here. But it is just one safeguard in case you have people in and out of your house a lot or you're taking something that's very dangerous.
Rachel, show people that lock fits onto the prescription medications as well. So maybe if you're in a household and you have one particular prescription with the potential for abuse, you can just lock that one particular medication with the
and code. once you have it unset, it just spins and spins. It never will undo. So yeah, they are very nice. Again, we don't give these to everyone. I think right now our primary means of getting them out is through Job and Family Services and maybe some of the schools, or I'm not positive where all we went with them, but yeah.
And this is also another one that if you would go to the Anti-Drug Coalition website and request one, we could say, come pick one up here at the agency, or we could let you know what school districts have it or what agencies. And I'm just going to say I had my own child. I had one that was on an ADHD medication in high school. And I know some other students that have been on that medication. And most kids don't like that medication. They don't enjoy taking it. But it was pretty necessary for him to be successful during a school day. So I know even with what I do, I would get a little laxed on leaving his medication by the counter. And the reason was if I locked it, if I forgot, he wasn't going to school with it, which could be problematic for himself and for his teachers. And I wish I had this when he was in high school. Absolutely. Because then I could have kept it on my counter. And again, not that it's foolproof or indestructible, or you couldn't take it, but I would know if it was missing, or I would know if someone was in there. So again, I wouldn't have been worried about my son misusing that medication, but
it is a controlled substance, and it is a sought-after drug out on the street.
Absolutely.
So that's a good thing to keep in the box. And I like the box too because it's not screaming that there's medication in it. Yeah. It's very low key. Somebody saw it sitting around, they wouldn't necessarily think twice about it.
Yeah. What else do you have to say about medications, Mary?
I guess just kind of divide the age groups up. In the younger children, it's just unintentional use, but you want to keep them out of the way, as you referred to. The colors, it's attractive. They don't know if they're jelly beans or gummies or whatever. They're kids, They want candy, and if it's accessible, unfortunately, they're going to help themselves to it. As far as the adolescent population, their curiosity and experimentation kind of starts at that age. And so things that are easily accessible in the home could be a danger. And again, going to friends and families' homes, things that they have could be a danger to them. And then in the older adult population, I just think specifically if someone has dementia, and sometimes they may take their medicine in the morning and not remember if they took it, and we don't want to have double dosing. So even though it may not be a controlled substance, and I know that's our focus here, or something that may lead to addiction, but it's just for their own safety, keeping it under, lock.
Now, Mary's part of the School Nurses Association, and we had met with their group, a couple years ago, and we were having a focus group just trying to get some information on really the prevention of prescription drug misuse. And one of the things that you all brought to light to our organization was it might not even be as much prescription drug misuse in middle and high school, but it might be the misuse of over-the-counter medications. And you all changed the way we think about the work we do, because it was in our conversation with the nurses that we realized, okay, if our young people are not respecting over-the-counter medication, and again, taking one Advil every 3 hours or 2 or 4 or whatever, because you were saying like sometimes students just wanted to take a medication to feel better. If you start that kind of pattern, maybe you were not exposed to a prescription drug medication until you get out of high school. But if you go to college and you kind of have this like non-respect for over the counter, it's easier to carry that over into prescription medication. And I said some people end up struggling with addiction intentionally and some very unintentionally. So it might be just that non-respect for how you handle over the counter and then prescription that can create that addiction potential.
Yes. I get it in the clinic a lot when kids come in. They want everything fixed right now. I have a headache. Give me a pill so it will go away. There's other measures you can take besides taking a pill. I think the misconception is if they sell it over the counter or you prescribe that for my mom or my grandpa, then it's safe because otherwise they wouldn't have it out there. Well, it is safe if it's used properly by the proper individual.
Yeah.
So yes, I get concerned about over-the-counter things. And again, I'm not generalizing to all adolescents and teenagers, but there's a large number that want to experience what it feels like to be high, and they will try anything.
Yeah.
So you just have to be careful with all your medication.
Okay.
And especially prescription medication, because, we don't want some teenager taking grandpa's heart medication because they think they could get high from that, and then we have a cardiac emergency.
And you brought up something, Mary, that I think is interesting that people maybe don't think about as much these days, and that's we get overprescribed, I think, especially for pain, because we don't like being uncomfortable. And I understand that. No one likes being uncomfortable, but there are other pain management techniques. The reason I bring this up is because I think most people, I know I have had a boyfriend of my friend who passed away from a drug overdose. And the way he started was he got injured in high school. He had a snowboarding injury, got on pain pills, and then after that, you don't want the pain anymore. Regardless of what's causing it, it could be emotional pain.
Sure,
exactly. So it's not that it's necessarily going to cause an addiction, as long as you're right, you're careful, you're using it properly, and then maybe learning some alternative pain, management techniques, and you're better off, I think.
I agree.
Is that one that you have to work with students on different ways to manage discomfort?
It's always a challenge. Just again, alternative methods besides taking a pill. I always tell them, what do you think they did way back in the day before there was a CVS or before there was a doctor in town?
Yeah.
People managed, and we can manage too. And now sometimes it is absolutely necessary to take the pain medication, but I think that's part of our responsibility also, is to teach to use it properly.
Sure.
The right frequency, duration, dose.
And Mary, as I'm looking at you and kind of hearing your voice, I think it's super important for adults to understand this is an adult issue as much as it is a young person. Like, we have to, as parents, to keep our kids safe, have these conversations. We need to talk about how do we manage pain, whether it's emotional or physical. We need to model good medication safety, meaning even if you're on a long-term medication, I would suggest in front of your children, grandchildren, when you take it, keep it in its bottle that it came in, so they're not saying it, in all kinds of baggies and everything like this. Read the medication label. When they get something, read it with them, so they're understanding that, that you're very respectful of that medication. I take this much, this often.
You would make an excellent nurse giving out medication. You're talking about the 6 rights. Right patient, right dose, right med, right time, right route. Yeah.
There you go. Okay. But I think it is just very important that parents model that well, because our kids tend to do what we do. And sometimes we do things with the knowledge behind it that they might not have.
It's true. I actually think about that even with vitamins, because right now I have, a 6-year-old and an almost 3-year-old, and it's these gummy Flintstones vitamins. And of course, to them, that is like candy. And so I remember Jill waiting for the day she could take 2 of them, because that was the amount. Kept having to tell her, like, no, before then, no, it says 1 on the bottle. You're not old enough, even though it's just vitamins. You can still take way too many vitamins. You don't want to hurt your liver and your organs. So that's something to think about with little ones.
Very good. So I'm just trying to think if we missed anything. We have the drug take back on April 24th from 10 to 2 at Trinity
and Union Hospital and
Cleveland
Mercy
Clinic, and then Mercy. And I am forgetting their new name change.
Go look it up.
There you go. We have permanent drop-off boxes, and they're at, I think it's on that magnet over there.
They're at the Sheriff's Office. They're at Denison Police Department, New Philly Police Department, New Cumberstown Police Department, Strasburg Police Department, Sugar Creek Police Department. I was redundant. All the police departments.
And I can say,
go ahead.
At the end of the school year, when any medication that we have from students that had it administered throughout the school year, if it's not picked up, I take it over.
Oh, good.
Both New Philly or the sheriff's, whichever I happen to be around. And I can assure anyone that is hesitant to do that, there's nobody watching you.
Yeah.
I just walk in with a very big bag and I stick it in it and walk out, and no one ever questions. So it's very anonymous.
So if y'all haven't seen what Mary's describing, it looks like a mailbox. So you go in and literally you just pull it down, drop the bag in. And I will let you know, our law enforcement really encourages people to drop off. Because they're continually fighting a drug epidemic here in our county, in our nation. So anything we can do to eliminate a pipeline of drug abuse, they're all for it. So even if you have, like, someone had passed away and you have a ton of medications in your home, if you call the Anti-Drug Coalition, most likely I'm going to call the sheriff or our local police chief and say, hey, would someone be able to swing by and pick this up? Just they're that willing to get large quantities of unwanted, unused medications with potential for abuse out of our communities. So that's very much welcome.
And to add to that, too, if there is anyone leery about it, they do have to follow a chain of custody with the pills. They are weighed before they're transported, and then the weights are checked when they get to their destination. Only certain individuals, law enforcement, can handle them. They're under constant video surveillance or right in front of a person. So, it's a very safe process. It's much safer than having them sitting around your house when you're not going to use them.
Perfect. So for our older people, what would you suggest, Mary?
I would suggest if there's anyone that may have any kind of dementia or forgetfulness, we want to keep those medications up and out of the way, and maybe pill boxes with a day-to-day that they can put them in so they don't forget.
Very good. So diversion can happen at that elderly home in particular. So, just be mindful of if it's not being used to get it out of the house. For parents, model it well. Have conversations with your young people about it. Let our young people know it is not okay to misuse prescription medications, to get high, to experiment. There's a potential for addiction, and just have those conversations. They're important. Model it well. Help our young people deal with pain, whether it's drink a glass of water or take a break or relax for a little bit, deep breaths, whatever those might be. It's your body's telling you. What does pain tell us? That
it's just an alert symptom that something's not quite right, but it's not necessarily something catastrophic.
So it doesn't mean it's bad. It's just telling you.
A headache can be from a million different things. Maybe it's because you're a little stressed. So taking that break, taking a walk, maybe laying down for a little bit, heating pad, that a lot of times is all you need.
Perfect. So parents, help your young people develop those skills. Young people, clearly we do not want you misusing prescription medications or over-the-counter or anything like that. So, be aware of what the instructions are on those. And we just encourage people to take advantage of the drug take-back days or any of the resources we have. If you want to know about the resources, go to adctusc.org. Is that it?
Well, everybody's thinking about spring and spring cleaning, so I would say spring clean your medicine cabinet or whatever meds you have out there, because there's probably a lot. You could use that space for something else.
Awesome. Okay, that is great. Spring clean your medicine cabinet this year. Nice. Okay. Well, listen, Mary, thank you so much. Rachel, I appreciate y'all. Thanks for sharing this great information. Much. Absolutely. Thanks. Okay, guys, we'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Tuscarawas County Anti-Drug Coalition podcast. Please follow us on Facebook and visit our website at adctusc.org.